Shalom Zev. Let's get to learning Torah here. So I'll review what um, I believe I discovered of the path of the Nevi'im of Da'as Hashem, and then you'll share your criticism thereof or kashas. I qualified by saying what I believe I discovered because, like everything else, this teaching too is imperfect and can be, I'm aware of the fact that it's imperfect and can be improved upon, and that's part of why I want to hear your kashas and see where I'm not sure which parts you're going to focus on, meaning there's two aspects. Number one, have I read the Nevi'im properly? Is it true that I've rediscovered their core teaching, essentially, is my humble claim. Um, so that's number one. And number two, is this core teaching really the best teaching in the world? I guess that's my second humble claim. That's the Nevi'im's humble claim, or not so humble claim, because Yirmiyah says we should be proud. So that claim is a proud claim, okay? But my humble claim is that I rediscovered the you're smiling too much.
Proud that you know, not proud that you know, or proud that you discovered the way to know.
No, right. The proud of the knowledge. Right. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Exactly. It's true. The result of it is what one should be proud of, right? Not having the path.
And I'm
Correct.
smiling because I'm just excited, not no
I
other
know.
reason.
Simchas HaTorah. I know. I love it. I know. It's great. Um, Trust me, I appreciate the smile and the excitement for this Torah, which is truly very exciting. So again, so the two claims are that this is what the Nevi'im meant. And that's important, of course, in order to study the Nevi'im properly, if we treat them as a source of great wisdom, which we do. And then if we do understand that this is the Nevi'im meant, is this indeed something that we should accept as being the greatest teaching, the most important thing? Okay,
Can I
so
just ask, well, the Rebbe says that this is the way that the Nevi'im, it's like the Nevi'im's course. This is
I
the
think
way
so.
of the Nevi'im. Yeah, but isn't that, and I understand why Rebbe's saying that, but isn't that maybe limiting? Because in a way, once it's discovered, then it's read back into this is what the Torah wants,
Oh, you're
or
saying limiting
even
by
outside of that, like this is what Hashem wants from humanity always
yes.
and forever. So,
Okay.
so
Okay, so you're telling, so I think what you're saying is that I'm aiming too small by saying I'm reclaiming the Nevi'im. We should just say we're reclaiming Hashem's Ratzon. Is that what you're saying?
yeah,
Yeah, but I meant the Nevi'im as that. I didn't mean the Nevi'im as opposed to not the Torah, and nor did I mean the Torah as opposed to Hashem's will, which is yes synonymous. I'm considering all of those synonymous, identical. Of course, there are differences between the Nevi'im and the Torah, and I explore those in my writings. But the Torah itself, its purpose is Da'as Hashem. Parenthetically, I have this vart, which I'm going to share one of these days before Tisha B'Av. Since Tisha B'Av is coming, I'll tell it to you. On Tisha B'Av, we read maybe the most important pasuk in all the Nevi'im, which is the only thing a person should be proud of is Da'as Hashem. We read that on Tisha B'Av. Okay, that's like the climax of the Haftarah on Tisha B'Av. And I was thinking that like Tisha B'Av is a time where we do Sisrei Torah. Because why Sisrei Torah? Because a whole year round, we don't tell people what they're missing, because then they'll sit on the floor and they won't do any work and they'll cry and they won't eat and they won't drink. And we can't have that. We want people to feel good about themselves and be productive and learn Torah. So what do we do a whole year round? Basically, we tell people things are more or less okay. Learning Torah, you're davening, keeping Shabbos, you know. So, but once a year, we reveal the core essence of the Torah and we make people realize how far we are from it. And that puts them into this state of mourning. And that, of course, is necessary for them to retrieve it. In order to retrieve it, right? Like on Tisha B'Av, Mashiach was born. It means that in order for us to ever retreat to get to the Gula, we have to really feel what we're lacking. But I think that on Tisha B'Av, we're focusing on the secret of the Torah, which is that it's all about Da'as Hashem. And if you don't have Da'as Hashem, then everything else is meaningless. But that's not something we could always tell people. Since it's the 9 days now, we have more of a license to announce this site. Anyways, so let me, okay, I'm sorry for my rambling here. Let me get to what I want to get to. So I'm going to say over the fourth part course, and then we're going to hear your kashas, right? That's the plan? Okay,
yeah.
fine. And this we did in a previous conversation. We went through the steps, but in brief, the steps are like this. Step number one is, and they all revolve around Ani Hashem, both in terms of the texts of the Tanakh, not just the Nevi'im, Torah also, where Ani Hashem is this invitation for a person to respond to that with Da'as Hashem. Ani Hashem is the call that a person can respond to. And in Ani Hashem, we could find throughout Tanakh various themes that relate to this announcement or this invitation, introduction, Ani Hashem. And these four steps are what I see as being the path of Da'as Hashem. The four steps are step number one, a person bearing his soul, recognizing that his innermost thoughts, innermost being is revealed in the presence of Hashem. And therefore, a person starts thinking differently. So, and the way I tweak that, and I'm interested in hearing, of course, if you have something to say about that, is that a person should imagine that his thoughts are universalized. So instead of thinking a private thought, think as if your thought is replicated across all of time and all space into the future. And if that's so, once you allow, that's what it means to be in the presence of Hashem. For your thoughts to be in the presence of Hashem means that I understand that your thoughts are not private; they're part of something that is total, which is all of the universe, all of Hashem's actions. And once you start thinking that way and testing your thoughts for that, you're going to have a different quality kinds of thoughts and therefore different quality kinds of actions. The quality kinds of actions and thoughts that result from this kind of testing yourself for universality is what we call chesed, tzedakah, mishpat, all the moral good qualities. So then you're going to, that's step number two, that you're going to change your character. Step number three is that you will have faith, emunah, that this good that's within your own soul is out there in the world, because as you are, you take that as axiomatic that that same goodness should be out there, and then that will culminate in yediyah when you actually experience that goodness that you had emunah that you believe that you will find. So those are the four steps.
Okay.
And as you pointed out last time, I think you made the point that the only thing that you really have to do is the first step. The rest the second, third, and fourth happen by themselves. But I would say though, I think to be aware of the second, third, and fourth is probably helpful in terms of having them develop properly. So although it's something that's supposed to happen automatically.
Yeah, I wonder also if it's possible. I mean, you tell me, but it's possible maybe for someone to happen to strike upon step two or step three, and then through that, like start there, like by
Interesting.
chance. And
Interesting. I
um,
don't know.
but also, I would just say like this is Rebbe's grand theory. Like this is what the world is all about. This is what
Right.
Hashem wants from us. This is what will bring us to the end.
Yeah.
And to know Hashem, which is the greatest thing
Right.
ever.
Right.
Um, and I'll just say it's obviously it sounds a little crazy when you say it like that, but it isn't so like it. There are certain parts of it are not so mechudash. Like there are a lot of people a lot of people have wrote along these lines. A lot of right, a lot of
You point to anything
things. A lot of
specific?
our
Yeah. No,
ancestors
I agree with you. I'm just
like
curious.
that the point is to chesed, tzedakah, mishpah, both Jewish and not Jewish. That this is like right.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah, the chiddush is in formulating it, I guess, in the steps. But and like thinking about it in a detailed way and articulating it. I don't think there's anything, completely radical in terms of, let's say, the ultimate goal. Like, what am I saying? The ultimate goal is to be in line with Hashem. Like, yeah, I mean, pshita, right? So I agree with you, and I sort of vacillate between like feeling that this is an important chiddush and the most important thing to think about, and also thinking that like there's no chiddushim here. But I
well,
think the
even
chiddush is in the method,
well, that could be part of the Kiddush too. That right, like the greatest, most amazing things are the simplest
Yeah,
things we know all along. But
yeah,
like it's a radical approach to that. Like
sure,
all of the Kiddushim are unnecessary. Like it's
right,
right. Rebbe was having such a hard time defending this approach of like, no, read like the text of the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, and like see the message in it, and that's like, whoa, like everyone's asking,
Right.
Yo, that's so hard, but it's really like so simple what Rebbe's
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
Um,
And also I would say that that's another value of having this as a methodical kind of formulaic theory of what's going on in Tanakh is that it also it helps you it gives you a tool for reading Tanakh in light of these ideas that really makes everything like fit in neatly. So in other words, the power of a good theory is it's not necessarily that it's the content or that it's telling you something new that it's not necessarily telling you something new that you wouldn't have known otherwise, but it's giving you a tool, it's giving you a way of approaching, let's say, texts for now, Tanakh, and a way of reading them in a way of reading them that then that way of reading it ends up being very clear and compelling and therefore supports the theory and allows you to read it through. So it sort of unlocks
but
Tanakh.
Rebbe, part of the special thing about Rebbe's theory is that if you come into the text without any preconceived notions, and Rebbe is not the first person to say this, this is the message that you come out with.
That's the
And
message I came
that
out
is
with.
true,
Yeah.
if that is true,
Then this
then
should be
why
the
would I
essence.
don't
Yeah.
need the theory to I don't need the theory. The theory should say, don't read it in light of my theory. There's you
Right.
don't need to. Just read the whole thing with as clear of a mind as possible.
Yes, yes, 100%. Right. So I'm not saying that you need this theory in order to be Tanakh. And I think I found it within Tanakh without any preconceived notions, at least to the extent possible. But what I'm saying is that once you have this way of thinking, you sort of understand what's going on in light of it, and it becomes much easier. It just fits together. You start appreciating psukim more. You start appreciating the value of every pasuk. You start appreciating the fact that there's this overarching system that we're trying to fit into, and that everything is contributing toward. And also, I want to say, besides for text, besides for Tanakh, also actions. That's why another reason to have a clear theory is to start saying, okay, what's the purpose of action? What's the purpose of halacha? What's the purpose of Talmud Torah? What's the purpose of a mitzvah as such? And you have to have even if what I'm saying is intuitive, by articulating it and by insisting on it, it allows us to face these questions. So, in other words, by insisting that the purpose of the Torah is Da'as Hashem in a very clear way, we're able to then ask the question, like, okay, so why mitzvahs? Why halacha? And everyone sort of has these questions, right? Why is halacha the purpose? If is that really the final purpose? But it's a lot. Sometimes it's a vague question, and once you have clarity about what you consider the goal of Torah to be, then you know what the question is, what the question should be, and that obviously helps you get to a possible answer.
This will take us into some of the questions that I have, but this has been so far very we mentioned a lot about the Torah and halacha and Judaism but the four steps seem to be beyond that.
Mhm.
And I'll explain what I mean
Okay.
if it's there already. But I guess
I think what you're saying is that Judaism or Torah is downstream of the steps. So we have to think. Is that what you're saying? Is that where you're going?
well,
I'd like to hear. I'd like to explain yourself.
I mean, I guess I'll explain it. But the simple thing that I mean is that I can meet a alien off the street that's never heard of Judaism or the Torah, and I can
Right.
tell him, here are four steps. Open your thoughts to all of the universe
Right.
before and after. You'll start to cultivate a certain
Right.
personality. You'll
Right.
start to believe a certain thing, and then you'll
Right.
start to know something.
Right.
There's no room, there's no necessity for Torah there. That
Exactly.
is one of my questions.
Wait, I want to just comment on that. Right. It's very interesting. I want to hear the question, but I want to just comment on one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that remarkably the Torah never or maybe I shouldn't say yeah, let's say that. It never defines the name of Hashem. Never tells us like what is Hashem. And I think that's because if you start with that, then you end up with a lot of questions and you have a whole major ask on people that like you have to commit to this notion. Plus, we might not ever know what Hashem is, of course, as it also says in the Torah. So instead, what the Torah is all about is this kind of cultivating a mindset. And then let's say you tell your alien, you tell him about this four-step process, and he comes back to you later and he's like, okay, could you give me a name, a word for like what is this idea that I'm directing everything towards? You say, oh, actually, we have a name for it, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and maybe you can go into the theory of why it's called Yud Kei Vav Kei. But my point is that the theory of it is, I think, comes after the experience of it. Okay, the das comes before the Hashem in support of what you're saying. The Torah itself is sort of not top down, even though most people maybe would look at it like it is. I'm arguing the Torah is not top down because it doesn't tell us, okay, there's Hashem, and here's why we say that. It tells us to orient ourselves in a certain way, and this is, I think, the way. And that orientation, like, if you want a word for that, what is it that you're worshiping? What is it that you're going towards? That's Yud Kei Vav Kei. But the
Right.
same way I defined Chesed Tzedakah Mishpat by what results from bearing your soul, I define Hashem as what results, or the notion, which might be a little different for different people. Like we're not going to pin it down too much, but it's that total notion. It's obviously there's importance of totality, Hashem Echad, the totality of divinity that a person is in the service of by doing this practice.
Right. But you don't need the
That
Torah.
was
Yeah.
a right,
Well,
exactly.
Avram, and also, I don't know the details on how much Avram knew Hashem is something that you talk about, but right, Avram didn't have the Torah when he came to Hashem.
Right, right. So what's the Torah there to solve, right? Did Avram have? Oh, you mean your point is that you could have it without the Torah?
Just say you don't, yeah, you don't, right. So but your theory on its own doesn't require Torah and mitzvahs. And I don't know,
Correct.
what I wonder is if an alien does do does do the four steps, will he end up naturally on his own growing a pace and
Yeah,
beard?
I was about to say, will he have side locks? And that's always like, will he have a yarmulke and side locks, right? Well, so first of all, you have to understand the Torah is talking to a specific nation, to Bnei Yisrael. The fact that Da'as Hashem is universal and this method is universal, um, is different from the Torah, which is given to a certain nation with certain historical conditions. Obviously, certain mitzvahs specifically clearly relate to certain historical conditions, which is the whole problem of a ger, even that how is it possible for a ger to really become identical to a native Jew and then have mitzvahs that relate to historical experience of Jewry? It's a there's a real tension there. Typically, we talk about a ger as becoming one of Bnei Yisrael, but we learn Kuzri, and he insists that a ger is never identical to a native Jew, and there's good sources for that. So you're talking about the Torah, which is given to the nation of Israel. That's that just means that their role in promoting Das Hashem in the world necessitates a Torah. That
Hmm.
same Torah, maybe other people will need a Torah, but perhaps a different Torah.
But the four steps are universal,
For
are
sure.
beyond just Jews, is every for all of humanity.
100%. I don't see any reason why that should be. Yes, yes. I don't see any reason why we should lay claim to it. Um, there is an interesting question, a very interesting question about whether the Jewish experience, this Jewish historical experience, is what primes us for attaining this in a way that others cannot attain. In other words, so I subtly shifted, and I was waiting for you to pounce on it, but maybe I got it past you. I said something about the Jewish role in promoting Das Hashem. See, till now we're talking about an individual cultivating Das Hashem.
Right.
Okay, is the Torah there for an individual to cultivate Das Hashem, or is the Torah there for
Well,
uh,
I believe,
teach Das
I don't
Hashem?
know, but I think Rebbe knows my take on, I've said it before, but my take on this is that the best way, right, leading by example. The cultivating is the best way to promote.
Okay,
That when the Jewish people cultivate it, and just are matzliach more and more and more, that
yeah,
will cause other people to look up and say, "What's
yeah,
well? What did they have that's so
yeah,
special?" And come.
absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. But we're dancing around the question of it, which is why do we need the Torah for? It's part of this whole
Right.
goal. And then is the Torah there to help individuals gain Das Hashem, or is the Torah there to help the collective gain Das Hashem, or is the Torah there to stand for the collective Das Hashem and then as a message to others? I'm just throwing out a couple of ideas there. I'll get back to you in a minute. Let's stop for a second here. We'll get back in a minute.
Okay, so we're getting into a little bit of this isn't where I wanted to go, right? I
Okay.
wanted to attack the four steps on their own. But this is a fantastic discussion, which we do need to finish and
Yes.
elaborate on to the relationship between the Torah and Da'as Hashem, because
Right.
Da'as Hashem can be understood seemingly without the Torah,
Right.
and it's everything. So if you have everything without the Torah,
Right.
what do you need the Torah for?
Right.
Was the
Right.
Torah just to hold, was just the Torah just to hold us together until Rebbe discovered the four steps and then now it's over?
That's for sure.
Or
Don't say
no?
that. Don't say that. No, the Torah is there to support. Okay, listen, it's fair. I shouldn't say don't say that. You can ask any question, obviously.
No, I'm
Otherwise, not
saying,
being fair.
yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
I
Why?
know.
Rebbe's saying four steps is everything.
Right. Hmm.
So what do I need the Torah for?
Correct. Right. Okay. So as you said, I guess we're not going to go into that because that wasn't your main focus now, right?
No, it wasn't my main
Right.
focus. My main focus was, I think there's so much to talk about around the four steps, like what gives Rebbe the ability to make such a theory? Why didn't all these people have this theory and all this and that? But like, I think we have an opportunity to actually discuss the Teichen. Um,
Yes.
and,
Which is
so
much
I
more
was
interesting
reviewing,
than the background, right?
yeah, the actual material, and I was thinking about, right, Rebbe has the credentials for such for a theory in Tanakh, right? Rebbe has a Chidon Tanakh emeritus, and there are many proofs, right? Rebbe writes in the Substack plenty of psukim from the most amazing places, from the building of the Beis Hamikdash, from Hashem's first appearance in the Torah, like the most fundamental places,
Right.
the places where you think you'd look, those are the places where Rebbe pulls Makaris from. But I do think that in a way that Rebbe doesn't need Makaris, like make a conjecture, right?
Ah.
Say a conjecture, and like it's on
Mm,
me, it's on
mm,
anyone to find holes and to ask
mm,
questions. And if it survives, then
mm.
it could have been Nevuah. I don't care, right? Where it
Right.
came.
Right.
Was
So I
it?
guess you're saying that like I started right. So you're saying I started off with two things. I said number one, I'm maintaining that this is what the Nevi'im were all about. And number two, the second question is this interesting to us? And you're saying let's just drop number one and go straight to number two, right? That's
Right,
yours.
number one is for I mean not drop it, but like we have an opportunity to get into the Teichen, and I think maybe we can do that because
Okay.
and Rabbi has other in a different setting. It's equally important, but in a different setting to
Yeah.
discuss that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
rare to I mean,
It's important because like I said before, it helps us unlock Tanakh. And also, it helps us to learn from Tanakh because these are the people who had experience doing this. Like this is what they were living for. Imagine I told you there was a society or even a secret society of club of people who were like focusing on this and developed things around this. So we would want to learn from them just to
well,
see.
I would want to do this because I want to. Well, Rabbi says at the end of four steps, I get Hashem. I understand
Yeah.
Hashem. So that's great enough of reason itself. I
No, it
want to know.
is. It is. But I think we would also use this. No, but we'd also be interested in following the histories and the annals of the secret society to see what they did about this because we probably learn from that. Right?
Right.
I mean, same way if you had any theory about like, okay, I think we should put such and such a notion at the center of our consciousness and develop our lives around it. And then I tell you, okay, you're not the first one to do this. There were people that are doing this for 1,000 years, and oh, that's interesting. Let's see how it worked for them, and maybe they probably thought of things that I might not think of. So yeah, that's what we learn from people for.
Okay, so I agree. I would love if Rebbe had answers to the questions from the psukim, or
Which
how the
question?
Nevi'im did it,
Ah,
then yeah, that would be
mhm.
amazing. But I thought of some questions and I figured we'd go one by one. So today, let's ask questions on step one and just recap. Step one, Rebbe said, is bearing one's soul before Hashem, opening one's thoughts up.
Right.
Um,
Very
so
powerful, very powerful praxis that you can do. I recommend it, highly recommend it. It's like it's illuminating, like you just feel like you're in a state of illumination after you do it. You could do the same thing. Like we're having this conversation, and let's say let's do it together, okay? Because I usually do it by myself, but now such a great Talmud, let's do it together, okay?
okay.
Rishus, and we're both gonna let's see what happens when you do that session with two people.
Well, that's my first question. I don't know if Rebbe wants me to read all the questions first, or
Okay,
we'll
let's
do
do
one
that.
at
But
a
yeah,
time.
actually that's a good idea. But I want to but let's just complete this practice we're about to do, okay? I think it is a good idea to read all the questions. But let's just
Can I
what?
read the first question because it's the
Sure.
first question?
Sure, sure, sure.
Practically, how does one do it? Can we do a live example right now?
Okay,
This
so
is question number one.
okay. That's
And there's a lot of parts, I guess a couple
okay.
sub questions there, but let's
Ah,
but let's start there and see what comes.
yeah,
But
that's great. Oh, that's great. I can't believe it. Okay, good. That's great. Okay, so let's do a live practice right now. Yeah, shall we?
let's do it.
Okay, so normal people, which is what we were before we're trying to do this, are doing this for all sorts of reasons, good reasons mostly, probably. I think our kavanahs are the Shema, which is all nice. But we want to like really refine that and really test our attitude towards the fact that we're having this conversation. And how are we testing it? We're saying like this, okay, is the fact that we're having this conversation, which is an exploration of something that we consider the most important thing that can unlock the greatest human success and knowledge of Hashem, is this pursuit something that we would embrace the world being full of? Would we want everyone to be doing this? Do we want this to be the subject of discussions into the infinite future? Um, but then you have to imagine, like, okay, so imagine that this was happening, or imagine that the conversation that we're having is being broadcast throughout the world and that everyone is engaged with it. Are we okay with that? And I know my answer is somewhat. I'm not sure why. I
Well,
think because it's something a little unauthentic and that I'm picking
it's
up on.
scary. It's scary, but I think this is part. I'll give an example, okay, as to why I get held back because I'm forced to confront with all of the non-perfect things that I'm doing right now,
Right.
including in the back of my mind, hoping that right when Rebbe even said it, like saying like, yeah, I hope we are broadcasted so that I could be famous and make a lot of money,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So then I'm confronted with that, and I
Right.
know that that's an intention
Right.
in my head. It's one
Right.
that just it'll be
Exactly.
there. It's like, no, do I want everyone else to have that? I
Yeah.
don't know. So now I have a step back. I
Hmm.
take a step back, like a hesitation there.
Hmm. And you think the hesitation comes from?
Hesitation comes from I know that I have an ulterior motive right now that I want to go viral and
Mm,
become famous for the
mm,
covered and
mm,
the money that will come from having such a successful podcast.
mm.
And that's not a pure intention.
Correct.
So that's a selfish intention. And
Right.
there's hints of that in my intention right now doing
Right.
this.
Right.
So
Exactly.
now when I'm forced to think, do I want everyone to be doing this?
Right.
I'm forced to confront, wait, do I want real, like, yes, it's good. We're talking about good things. We're both look good and everything seems wholesome and healthy and we're respectful and great. And we're searching for truth, which is incredible. But like, wait, I do have an element of that
Hmm.
inside.
Right.
Like,
And therefore what? And therefore you're not so sure that you want this to fill the world.
therefore, I start to get hesitation on yes, on well, maybe I
Because-
don't want this to fill the world,
Right.
but but I only realize that because I'm testing, right?
Right. So it's the inauthenticity. I think you're saying the same thing. I said this a little bit aspect of inauthenticity. It's that inauthenticity, which is what you're scared to fill the world with, right? The selfishness. You're like, there's some part of it
Yeah,
which is impure. We fill the world with that. That's not such a good thing,
yes. But
right?
and wait, but now acknowledging that, I can go deeper because I can say, yes, I'm human. Yes, I have my things. And I acknowledge that that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm
Right.
acknowledging it out.
Right.
I acknowledge that I have that piece of me.
Right.
But like now that I've embraced that in a certain way, like now can I go farther? Now can I want it to broadcast? And
Yeah,
you can,
because now that becomes part of your mind, of your mindset, and maybe that is something that you're comfortable filling the world with. In other words, imperfections, but knowledge of self-knowledge and awareness of the imperfections is a very different thing than an imperfection that masquerades as perfection.
right, right.
So
People can have conversations where they're self-aware on that level. Yeah.
yes, and I want to say the following. Essentially, what you just said, and this ties into maybe people are thinking like, okay, what does it have to do with Ani Hashem or being in the presence of Hashem? Now it's pretty obvious, but just to speak it out. Um, when you imagine this, what we're doing as filling the totality of being, as far as we can understand it, then you're basically imagining being in the presence of Hashem, because obviously the whole universe is in the presence of Hashem, taken as the whole universe. It's just we as like pratim are maybe not really, we're hiding from Hashem or whatever. We're not necessarily um standing in front of Hashem and or doing his working for him like the totality of being is, right? You understand what I'm saying? So it's when we connect the totality of being by saying, look, what I'm doing is relates to totality of being, and I'm happy with it related to it, that we put ourselves in the presence of Hashem. Okay. Now,
Right.
do you walk into front of Hashem and say, hey Hashem, Chatasi, I'm a bad guy? No. But you do walk in front of Hashem and say Chatasi with contriteness and recognizing the fact that you did something wrong. So that kind of feeling is something you could bring in the presence of Hashem. The feeling of we're not perfect, but we know we're not perfect. But to walk into Hashem, but to bring into the presence of Hashem bad midas that are not aware of that, of the fact that they need to be fixed. That's what we don't do in when we actually play out being in the presence of Hashem through tefillah or vidui. So that's an analogy. So the same way we can say chatasi to Hashem, I think we can also, at least like you said, at least it gets us further. Maybe it's not complete on the Hashem, and of course, remember, I mean, the ultimate is that it's supposed to weed out those bad midas. So at some point, it's supposed to work on us so we don't have those bad midas. But yeah, I agree with you. So okay, so we're doing this live thing. So right now we're doing this, and um so we're not ready to go public. We're not ready to go on the Hashem, me and you, huh? Because
I'm ready.
no, but you have that
ready to get,
you
I'm
have that
ready to
inner
get.
authenticity. Hmm?
What?
No, but you have an aspect which is not pure, as do I. As do
Well,
I.
so I don't know. My moving past, when I acknowledged that, my self-awareness of that
Hmm.
created now authenticity, right?
Hmm.
Once I acknowledged it, I'm
Yeah,
now authentic.
maybe.
I authentically acknowledged my faults and put them out.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Now,
Um,
now maybe I am ready.
I guess we have to think about like, see, here's the thing though. Are we doing the best we can in terms of not having those faults? Meaning to say, like, let's talk about those faults. You were talking about it in terms of intentions. Okay, I want to be a little more concrete. You have basically good intentions in this conversation. I also have basically good intentions in this conversation. Okay, I'm not talking about you as opposed to me. We're both the same. We basically have good intentions here, but like all humans, there's parts of us that are base and selfish and self-centered and so on, right? Those are not just problematic intentions. Those are going to carry over into the practice, into what we do. And that's in a way much more dangerous. If our intentions were 100% pure, then probably our product and our teaching would be that much purer. So when we're talking about like, are we willing to take this global, take this universal, it's not just enough. I don't think it's enough to say, well, my intentions are basically pure, and even the impure ones I'm acknowledging. So therefore, you know, I did my acknowledgement of the exile or whatever. Like, I mean, they're going to affect the teaching. So like, yes, in general, we're happy for everyone to be talking about Da'as Hashem, but we have to drill down deeper. We have to say, do we want them to be doing it in the way we're doing it? And if there's some impurity in it, then to that extent, we're not in the presence of Hashem. But I think it's very important to say it's not an all or none thing. Okay, it's not an all or none thing. I think there's degrees in being in the presence of Hashem, and so let's. It's getting a little complicated. I think we should
But
try.
one can be in the presence of Hashem while not being perfect, right?
Right.
One can have a perfect thought and do a perfect thing while not being perfect.
Okay, you could say
It's an
that.
existentialist like aura that I have that we're not supposed to be perfect. We're
Right.
not, but and I think if right by acknowledging that in the purest way, not necessarily that my words maybe I wouldn't broadcast,
Right.
right, but
No, I think you're
a
saying the same thing.
sadness, let's say a certain sadness that I have about a certain need I have.
Hmm.
Okay. Is that a Das Hashem? Does that pass the test of being in time? That I feel sad right now that I'm selfish. And
Yes,
I
that passes the
genuinely
test.
do, and
Yeah.
I put them. So that is, right?
Sure. Right.
And I
That-
wonder that if in action that I don't.
Okay,
I'm a little.
listen, no, I think it got a little needlessly complex because I think that's not an all or none proposition. There are aspects of this that are perfect, and to the extent that we think about the perfection of those aspects, and this is the way we think about the perfection by thinking, okay, there are aspects of what we're doing that we want to fill the world. To that extent, we're in the presence of Hashem. And then let's say imagine imagine actually a prophet standing in front of Hashem, okay? And when a bad meter kicks in and comes to his mind, he's not aware of Hashem for that moment, right? To the extent that the bad meter takes over. So it's not an all or nothing. It's not an all or nothing proposition. And it's like it's a constant striving to get better and more in the presence of Hashem. So I think for what we're doing, I would say let's do this in the presence of Hashem. You know? So let's put this in the presence of Hashem. Let's take our conversation right now and say we are willing to stand in front of Hashem as we do this, which is to say, we submit this to Hashem, we submit this to the totality of being. We're not seeking to hide what we're doing in our corner of reality. We actually want it, we want this to be, we're happy for this to be so for this to suffuse all of reality. And therefore,
This search for Das Hashem, this
right,
discussion, this opening of a discussion on the
yes,
topic,
right, is our
clashing
gift to Hashem.
ideas.
It's like our
Yeah.
gift to Hashem. We're willing to give this to Hashem. We're willing to present Hashem with this, which means we're willing to present ourselves and stand in Hashem's presence.
Okay. And this is an extreme question, but I think it'll highlight just an obvious question is, well, what's different than me saying, oh, obviously I don't want everyone to be doing this right now because then no one's watching the kids, right? Because then
Yeah,
no one's
yeah,
guarding the borders, right? So
right.
so where do you draw that line on
Yeah.
right? Is
So I don't know. Do you think we have to answer that question? That seems to be like a practical question, which I don't think we have to answer that. In other words, for the thought experiment,
Mhm.
I don't think we have to worry about wait, if we're doing this, we're not doing that.
Why?
Why? Because
Maybe I should be doing that. I don't know.
hmm, no, yeah, I don't know why. I was going to say, but it sounds weak. Uh, I was going to say that since this is a test for whether this is of something of value, this thought experiment, therefore we don't have to worry about second order effects of if everyone's doing this and not doing that. But I don't think that's true because um, we're not. It's an interesting test because we're testing for whether something has value, but by using a metric other than value, right? The metric that we're using is whether we'd fill the world with this. So that's a practical metric. So I think we do have to take into account all practical things.
Right.
In other words, if there was some philosophy of morals, but yeah, if there was like some philosophy of which we judge things, remind me to get back to that. I really think it's an important point about philosophy of morals. Okay, if there was some philosophy, I don't have a pen and paper. Can you jotting down? If there was a philosophy by which we were judging the value of what we're doing, whatever that philosophical system may be, then we have our rules of or our axioms, what makes something valuable. But here, what we're doing is we're saying, what makes it valuable, and this is why it's very Jewish and very Torahic. What makes something valuable is that I'll do it in the presence of Hashem. And what does it mean that I'll do it in the presence of Hashem? It means that I'll let this infuse all of Hashem's world. So that's a test. It's like we're imagining a situation, and then we're saying, do you accept that or you do not accept that? And that's a way of finding things about your soul that you may not even been able to find otherwise, right? You wouldn't have noticed. So I think then because of that, we do have to actually imagine as being a practical thing, and maybe we do have to ask the question of, uh, who's harvesting the crop, who's manning the shop. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
the answer to our question of this is Das Hashem thing is this my tafkid right now? Right? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing right now? Or am I supposed to be in the IDF? I don't know.
Yeah, that's
But
the answer to which
and that,
question?
and if the answer could very well be no, you're supposed to be in the IDF, and then I should shut the computer now and run to the IDF.
I
And
see. So you're saying,
that's fine. That comes up.
right. So
It's
you're saying that maybe the very fact that there are competing goods and values itself has to be part of the equation that we consider when we're committing to
Yeah,
something.
you won't pass a Das Hashem thought doing something that you're not supposed to be doing. And
Right.
if if
Okay.
you're in a career that you're not supposed to be in,
Yeah.
like I don't understand, maybe you wouldn't pass it.
Right, right, right. No, you're putting your finger on something very, very significant, and it's a very interesting thing you're pointing out here, and it may be a big weakness in the theory, and like something to really explore whether this can be solved. Because what you're pointing out is that there's no one thing. There's the division of labor issue, and there's no one thing that every individual should be doing. Um, So therefore, right, some people should be in the IDF and some people should be having this conversation and some people should be you know, watching the kids, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so therefore now that turns out that in order to determine like what's in the presence of Hashem, we need a greater theory of who should be doing what. And does Da'as Hashem talk to that? If it
Right.
doesn't talk,
Why do you need something else? I think that your step one addresses this question.
but how does it address it?
I said, because I'll think, is this something that I should be doing right now?
How are you
Is it
going to judge
something that
that?
I
How are you
want?
judging that? Oh, you mean,
'Cause my inside, there will be a part of me. If I really, if the
mm,
really the thing that I should be doing right now is
oh,
working or is on the is in the IDF, or if an accountant's real tafkid is a lawyer,
mhm.
it's not a first time coming up, right? He'll have this deep thought and he'll like, no, I shouldn't be here. I should be doing something else.
No, I understand, but I thought you were asking that, let's say the accountant should be a lawyer. Or let's say the lawyer should be a lawyer, okay? He doesn't think everyone should be a lawyer.
No, he
So what
doesn't.
makes him know that he should
Everyone
be a
should
lawyer?
be doing what they should be doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So you right. So but that's a little bit of that, not a little bit, that's a tautology. And we have to figure out how does everyone know what they should be doing? Where does that, where do we get to that? Okay, but maybe that's a different theory of division of
Why?
labor.
Why isn't that bearing my soul before Hashem? Hashem, I have a certain awareness of myself and the koiches that I have,
Right,
the things that I've been good at and that give me
right.
meaning. And in my
And that awareness is something that I want everyone to have in their way.
yeah,
Okay, fine, right. That's the point, right?
yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay, good. So the way is right. No, so it gets a little more nuanced. In other words, the way I was first presenting it was the whole world should be having this conversation, and that you pushed back. You said, "Well, then, then we got a problem.
The
If
whole
everyone's
world
having this
should not
conversation,
know.
who's driving the
But
bus?"
this is a conversation I want broadcast in the world. And I have to admit that I didn't have a expert thought that, no, wait, Zev, you should probably be an accountant right now.
Ah,
Like I didn't have that. I didn't.
right,
Some I didn't. And
right, right.
that's
Okay.
why I passed.
Right, right. You mean so you're because you feel that this is authentic. You're doing what's authentic to you, and you think everyone should be doing what's authentic to
At
them.
least right now,
Right now, I understand, of course. Yeah, yeah, sure. Tomorrow you might become an accountant.
it's already after working hours. So, I have a lot of more wiggle room. But
Okay.
yeah. Um,
Okay, good.
so this
But
is
I want to think about that more another time when I'll have to keep that in mind. It's an interesting point you're raising.
okay, and I
Oh, I want to
wonder
get
if
back to can I get back to my philosophy?
philosophy of morals, yeah.
Yeah, that's why this is really interesting. This whole, and I mentioned in passing that's why it's very Jewish and very Torahic, this whole theory, because it sort of circumvents the problem that philosophers are concerned with, which is how to determine how a person should act or what the good is. And it sort of creates a new path towards that question, which is what feels right if you go through this exercise of putting yourself in the presence of Hashem, which is in a way, it's like it's a very Toradic way because it's telling person what should you do, whatever serves Hashem. Like, well, that doesn't answer the question. Yes, it does, because by putting yourself in the presence of Hashem, then you'll know what the right things to do are. And in a way, it's like such a simple answer. So therefore, cuts out all the philosophy and also a very soul-centered answer because it's forcing a person to be very real and very much in the avodah of Hashem. So I think it's a very interesting to pursue. Like you have all these philosophies of good, and how is a person supposed to determine things, which never work, by the way, because people can write books about utilitarianism and this and that and the other thing, but nobody makes their decisions that way. No one ever sat down and no one has said the guy who's saying should I be a lawyer and accountant didn't say, wait a second, I have to first take a course in moral philosophy so that I can know what how I'm supposed to order my life. Said no one ever, right?
Not
So
even me.
what?
So not even me.
Yet the philosophers are making a point that, like, wait a second, there has to be some rules to this, right? How is this person supposed to know what to do? But I'm saying there's actually a shortcut. The shortcut is called serving Hashem, and here's how you do it. You do
Hmm.
this, and you'll feel very happy, and you'll know exactly what you should be doing.
Hmm.
And also, my theory says that like the problems of who should be doing what will be solved if everyone does this. I mean, that's I guess implicit in the theory, so that somehow that would,
Can we discuss a little bit more practically?
yeah,
So we just did one example now, and it was very different for me. It was very different than when I do it myself. I
yeah,
don't know. I still have to work out exactly how, but I don't know if
mm,
Rebbe felt that experience.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I don't know if I felt almost like it was hard to do it in public, like once you
hmm
say it. I feel like
hmm
you
mm,
get a lot more when you're just thinking, it's really you have
yes,
a lot more coming in, and you're I don't
yes,
know.
yes,
Um, but that's the idea of it. And it's and so okay, so practically what does this look like? Like, is this something I should do 5 times a day? Is it
mm,
something I should do when I'm davening? Is it something that I should do as much as I can whenever I remember?
mm,
Is there a way to like cultivate a state of mind so that it's
mm,
always happening?
mm.
Um, does Robbie have anything to say on these?
No, I have nothing to say on all that. I myself do it like when I record, when I remember, I try to do it more often. Recently I've been doing it during davening also. Yeah, go. Sorry, the question.
No, I was like, well, Rebbe mentioned the Nevi'im before. Like, what does Rebbe think the Nevi'im? What did David mean when he said, how are we supposed to take on Hashem? How often are we, what are the instructions?
Yeah.
How?
I think life is messy. I don't think there aren't. I mean, my feeling is that there aren't instructions in that way. It's like asking, uh, have a friend and like how often should I think about my friend in order to keep the friendship strong? Like, no answer.
So Rebbe's putting bearing your soul out there as step one, but there's no qualifications. Each has to bear their soul in their own way.
I think so. I think so.
And the
I
more
do
you,
think though that it's important to note that you could do it with the most basic kind of activities, like eating and going to work and saying hello to your friend and and kissing your kids like and it becomes and doing it for these quotidian kind of activities, the basic daily day activities will make them holy activities, and you'll feel it, you'll notice it, you'll be like, wow, I'm in the presence of Hashem when I'm doing this. So I recommend doing it not only when you're thinking of like major endeavors, or am I taking the right job. I think on the contrary, in a way it's easier to do it by those things that you're doing anyways, and like, just why don't you do this in the presence of Hashem, and you know and you sort of situate your psyche in this much more universal state.
I think that's really important what Rebbe said is like Dafka doing it in the things that you know for sure are 100% the right things to do. And then
Yeah.
you can really feel it.
Yes, and I think also those things that you know is basically right. But you going back to what you were saying before, perhaps it's beneficial to do it in those situations, because then that little mashu aspect, which is shlelishma, maybe will get refined by subjecting your thought, your activity to this test.
Mhm. Okay.
Oh, and then I
Um,
want to say a word about davening. I've recently been doing it more during davening. Okay, this is a whole different question about davening. I've been thinking a lot lately about kavanah by davening and why it's not such a simple matter. Davening, of course, has a lot to do with Da'as Hashem. Why do I say of course? Because the first thing we daven for is Das. Atochen Lodam Das, which, as Yerushalmi says, Imain Das Tefillah Minai. No Das is no Tefillah. So that's why Das is the first bracha. And Das means Das Hashem, because in the proof of that is that in the shortened version of Tefillah, which is Havinenu, so there's one couple of words corresponding to each bracha, and so we say Havinenu Hashem Elokeinu Ladas Durachecha. So Das is know the ways of Hashem. There's actually a medrash, I think it's in Nasai. Das ze hamakir es kainai. You know what Das means? Someone who's familiar with his creator. It's an amazing, it's beautiful medrash. That's what it means a person has Das. Otherwise, he's nothing. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get anything. That's, you saw my tweet about, like, it was a very interesting idea. Like, people are powerful and they could do this and that. Like, if you don't have Das Hashem, I just don't have any respect for them. Like, they have no power. I don't consider them to have any true power. because they're just not tuned into reality.
Well, I had a thought this week. I actually wanted to run this by Rabbi, but even before Atachlein, I thought it was interesting. Maybe invoking schos
Mhm.
and then saying uh, Baruch Atah Hashem Chayei Mesim is establishing this all of time, this all of
Mm.
time already. It's I'm saying I'm going from schos, which is the beginning of this, the first person that found, and until
Yeah,
what the reason I'm here right now until the end
yeah,
of and I'm
yeah.
establishing that kind of.
Very interesting. Right, very interesting. I mean, look, even the first bracha for sure, maybe goyel of nevanehem. Like certainly, what the concern of tefillah is like this beginning and end, and starts with Av Mitzvah Yaakov and ends with Geula, maybe goyel of nevanehem, and like let's flesh that out and see what that looks like. So it certainly involves putting yourself. Certainly, it's the tefillah is supposed to be establishing yourself into a place where your mind is inhabiting more than just your narrow specific concerns of the moment, but rather you're able to be thinking for something much larger.
And wait, what's kavanah is Rabbi saying? What is Rabbi saying about kavanah? I mean, let's say I would argue that I'm supposed to be saying the words and having kavanah for the words that I'm saying.
Okay.
What would the pushback on that be?
Why would you think I would push back on that? What do you mean?
No, Rabbi just said that Rabbi had some
Oh, kavanah.
kavanah, yeah.
Ah, it's a long, long, long story. And
Okay.
it has to do, yeah, okay, I
We
know.
don't have to do it now. I
No,
don't.
I know we should do it at some point. It has to do with what we were talking about before, whether having Da'as Hashem has to do with being a Jew or anyone can have Da'as Hashem. Because is assuming that Da'as Hashem is the endeavor of Da'as Hashem, of achieving Da'as Hashem, is supported by the particular experience of the Jewish people, which is something I believe to be true. So let me be clear. In other words, maybe I have to qualify something we had in the beginning of our conversation. I said, you asked me whether it's universal, anyone could do it. The answer is yes, anyone could do it. However, and everyone should do it. However, there is something unique. My understanding of Tanakh is that there's something unique to the Jewish experience as a nation, which allows them to successfully cultivate Das Hashem. What about everyone else? Where do they fit in? Do they fit in? The answer is yes, they do, but not in the same way, not in the same complete way that the Jewish people are supposed to. Okay, I know it's very abstract, and of course, there's all the cries
Am I
explanation.
wrong? Am I wrong if I say that the Jewish people are supposed to cultivate Das Hashem first, and then through the Jewish people, the other nations of the world will come to.
You're not wrong, but there's more to it than that because it's also true that the national experience, particular national experiences, give people a certain perspective on reality. So the Das Hashem that you and I are exercising, going through the steps and cultivating, because of our experiences, because of our orientations as Jews, can end up being looking different than the Das Hashem of someone from a different nation.
Oh,
Okay.
this raises a question.
This what?
This raises a question on Das Hashem.
Wait, I want to
Uh,
just finish. I want to just say about
oh,
tefillah. Okay, this gets to tefillah. Why? Because what this suggests is that when we're not having the full experience of the Jewish nation, which is to say, when we're not in times of geula, we're not able to have full Das Hashem, or when we don't have our land. Okay, because if Das Hashem is not just something that you could talk about in the abstract, but is it going to work, or what is it going to look like? That's going to depend on your conditions, on historical conditions. Which historical conditions are the best for achieving Das Hashem? Redemption, Exodus. Okay. When you're not under those historical conditions, or even worse, when you are part of a different nation's historical conditions, because you're in exile and you're having a different kind of experience of the world, which is to say a different kind of experience of Hashem, then your Das Hashem is not going to be quite Das Hashem. It's going to be something that's, let's say, akin to Das Hashem. It's like a quasi Das Hashem. It's an angle on Das Hashem. Like I said, I am
you
being vague.
Let me explain this. But this doesn't happen yet in step one. This happens later, right? Step one is still the
Um,
same.
Correct.
I mean, all of time and existence and everything is everything,
I know,
right?
No, yes, but let me tell you something. When you and I went through this exercise before, did we really take it to all of existence all the time? No, we didn't. I didn't. You tell me if you did it. We have a certain picture of what we mean when we say all of existence. I didn't think of that tribe on this Sentinel Islands. Forgot to think about them. You know those guys who come up in the news every once in a while with the spears? I forgot to think about them when I was thinking about why. Why did I forget to think about them? Because there's a certain picture of reality which none of us can be typhus the infinite, right? No one's typhus the infinite. No one thinks about the infinity at one shot, for sure not. So we have. So then, what then? Whatever we experienced in life determines, like, gives us a certain proxy for totality. None of us are thinking about true totality. We could talk about that, but we're not.
Wait, so how does Rabbi? I mean, I do it certain it changes always sometimes, but I mean,
Right.
if I'm doing it on the fly, then I'll go like from Bria, I'll do 6,000 years. I'll
Okay.
try to cover 6,000
That's
years,
not a lot of time. That's
a
not a
little
lot of
before
time.
and after.
But that's not a lot of time, right?
No, no, it's not. But I a little before and after. Just there's just less to think about before and after. They take
Okay.
some at least for me now. I don't know. But sometimes I'll run through chronology or I'll go through a certain like I don't know. But does Rebbe have like a
I don't know. First of all, are you doing the multiverse or not? Let's go with space. Are you doing, forget about time for a second.
I don't know, some version of me is.
No, but I mean, are you thinking about the
I
multiverse or
said
not?
some version of
Oh,
me.
okay. Okay. You're right. Cute. Right. Um, no, but that's a serious question. So I think you're saying 6,000 years. Okay, fine. Maybe. I think there's something very interesting about that. No, in other words, what's interesting about that is exactly what I was saying. The Hainu, the Torah gives us a certain model of what to think about, and and the idea is that thinking about that, which is what we're going to do as Jews, is going to be a good enough um proxy for thinking about everything.
Hmm.
Okay. No one's actually thinking about everything. So therefore, each nation and each kind of person, which I'm saying each nation, taking each nation as different kinds of people, different kinds of um what they take as they are given as reality. When they think of reality as a whole, what are they thinking of? Each nation is going to be different. So therefore, there's going to be different angles
Hmm.
on this question. Okay. So then pure Das Hashem is not possible in Gullus for this reason, because you're part of a different way of thinking. And this is we're covering so much over here, but I just want to get to that point about davening and why kavanah is not so simple. When the Mishnah says in Avis that we should daven for the peace of the Malchus, it doesn't mean famous Mishnah, right? It does not mean like, okay, it's a good thing to daven that things should be happy in the Malchus, because like of course you should daven for that. What's the chiddush? What it's saying is that every time you daven in Galus, you're essentially davening with a paradigm that's not a full Das Hashem paradigm, because you're under a different Malchus, not Malchus Shemayim or not Malchus Biz David. So what's tefillah all about? What's the climax of tefillah? Verchas Amo Yisrael Bashalom, Shalom Shel Yisrael. That's the weird Das Hashem is supposed to get you. But when you're in exile, you're not davening with Das Hashem. You're davening with Das, a little bit like Das Shivim Sorim, and that's called Shalom Shel Malchus. Your paradigm is you think that the Malchus should be successful. That you cannot think otherwise when you're in exile. And the mission is giving you a permit to daven that way. So the interesting thing about tefillah and Das Hashem and tefillah and Golos is that, as I was saying before, our Das Hashem will be achieved depending on our circumstances. And to sharpen that point further, we were talking about in the beginning whether Das Hashem is universal and anyone could do it. Anyone is invited to do this practice. However, the results will be different depending on where your starting point is. So there are things that are beyond our control. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you have someone who lives a very sheltered life, and let's place him 3,000 years ago in a very primitive society, and he knows nothing about even other people beyond the borders of his small little island, let's say. So even if he bears his soul to the whole of reality, his whole of reality ends at the boundaries of his country. He might not even be aware of a reality beyond that, just the great big sea or something. So he's not going to have Das Hashem. He'll have some kind of Das, And it may be something that can fit into Da'as Hashem if you have someone who can figure out where he fits in and how he could coordinate with the other person who has his kind of Das, and maybe a super theory that brings them all together. But he's not going to have Da'as Hashem. So that's why I was saying before, the historical situations of Bnei Yisrael, Yetzias Mitzrayim, redemption, are the material conditions.
And this is most people in most of time until now.
Perhaps, yes, likely, right. Right, exactly. In other words, the closer we get to infinity and to a concept of how vast things are,
Technology
how
and
much there is, how much is out there, how much Hashem's
internet.
world is. What you're saying is that now we become aware of how vast Hashem's world is.
Well, internet, I mean, now I know we know what happens on the other side of the world within
Right.
minutes.
Exactly. So to put it this way, if we're going to be the presence of Hashem, who's aware of everything, then the more we're aware of, the more we're in the presence of Hashem. Right? Is that sort of what you're saying? Right. So everyone who's approaching, even people who are approaching Das, they're coming with their experience. And therefore, to finish the point about tefillah, when you're in a situation where you don't have that expanded consciousness of Hashem because you're not in a state of geula, you could try as hard as you want. You're not going to have full Das Hashem. You're going to have something that's influenced by the Das of the other paradigm, the Shivim Sarim, the Ramban would call it. Each nation has its Sar, which means each nation has its partial understanding of Hashem. And you're going to be influenced by that. And therefore, your tefillah is also going to be influenced by that. And to daven under that paradigm is a little bit like Avodah Zarah, which don't be shocked because kol gar b'chutz la'aretz ki lo Avodah Zarah. So there you go. Certainly, if you daven in chutz la'aretz, if even by living in chutz la'aretz, you're like an Avodah Zarah. For sure, if you daven in chutz la'aretz, doing worship in chutz la'aretz, bad idea. Right? Because what are you worshiping? Oh, your notion of Hashem, but it's going to be influenced by your circumstances, even if you try as hard as you like. So that's why there's a Yerushalmi that says Rabbi Chiya never had kavanah during davening. I never had kavanah, he says. I tried once and it was messed up. It didn't work. I think this is why, because having kavanah by davening is by definition, when you're in Golos, is by definition being mispala b'shalom malchus, and Rabbi Chiya is like, no thanks, I'm not interested. Either the real thing or nothing for me. Because by being mispal b'shalom malchus, you're also supporting the malchus, obviously. And Chiya is like, I don't want to do that. I wanted to hasten the end. I want to wait for Mashiach. I want Mashiach to come. I don't want it to support this paradigm that's like not the perfect paradigm. So that's why I say tefillah is very fraught. It's not so simple to have kavanah. But at the same time, to your first question about when a person should do this practice, I've recently been trying to do it during tefillah, like really try to daven with Da'as Hashem. And so like during tefillah, I try to think of the brachas, simply the brachas, the things we're asking for as being something that could fill the world, and B, fill a world of people who are in the presence of Hashem. I find that puts me in a good state for tefillah. Like thinking about the people that I'm davening for, the world that I'm davening for is a world of people that are Isaac in this bearing their soul. Sort of makes everything. It unlocks tefillah for me in a big way. It makes it flow.
Well, once Rebbe said this, I started doing it too, and even, I mean, mishpat, tzedakah and mishpat, and these qualities filling the world, and right, like
Yeah.
Rebbe said, it's kind of easy to tap in. It's you're asking for more Das Hashem, and Das Hashem is these qualities, the step three qualities.
Right. Right, exactly. And exactly. And visualizing them coming into effect in a world where everyone's doing step one makes it all flow. It's like, yeah, this is perfect. That's why I think what Das comes
Yeah,
first.
but
Like
you can also have in mind how they've thus far come into effect.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, Atochen and Adam Das means we already have some Das, right? So I was asking for more.
Yeah. We have
Sure.
some binyan Yerushalayim. We
That's
have
right.
some refuah,
I'm trying to push buttons now. Okay, let's go.
some
Okay,
refuah. We have
for sure,
some
of course. Of
we have
course.
some plenty,
We have somewhat,
plenty,
of
like
course.
parnasa,
And we
right?
have a
Better
lot more
for
stucco mishpat.
generations.
Sure, we have a lot more stucco mishpat in the world than there was for a long time. 100%.
So yeah,
We have
where
to
it's
thank Hashem, of
where
course.
you see, yeah, you have to be makir tov for what we have so
Absolutely.
far, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I
So
would say is another thing is Rebbe saying bearing your soul in front of everything. I mean, it's funny because it hints a lot with what people say nowadays sometimes of like, with technology and the Internet of Things and how connected we are and the
yes.
Mossad and how we really and in the way that
Wait, wait,
scams
wait, wait. Did you say the
now.
Mossad?
The Mossad, whoever's you know, whoever wants, if the Mossad wants to be watching this before we publish it, they can be.
Well,
Uh,
first of all, they should be because this is going to have very intelligence implications for the not only
but
Israeli security, obviously, but the even global security. So just
even
saying.
when people talk about Big Brother, you know, but
Right.
like people in an aspect, it really like you already have to almost live your life with an extra caution of like things might get out and someone might be
Correct. In other
recording
words,
this.
so the
This
Fnei Hashem consciousness and is very it matches reality in a way that has never been the case before, right? It goes along with the mitzias of like a global mind that we're all a part of, we're all tapped into. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My teachers in high school already said, "Don't do anything unless you want it published on the front
Uh-huh.
page of the New York
Right.
Times." Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
that's
Right. It's like the
already
basic teaching. Gets back to you were saying before, like no chedushim here, but we just have to keep on exploring these ideas and then like applying them in the newer reality and unlocking
even
their great
talking,
power.
right? Even
Even what?
they're not chedushim. What's a chiddush is talking about them. That's the
Right.
chiddush. That
Listen,
itself.
and that
No
itself,
one else does it.
yeah, the fact that you have to talk about the basic things, that's the Messias Hashem famously says. He's not telling us anything new that nothing that no, that people don't know, but the chiddush is to talk about it. So you
Right.
said you have a bunch of list of questions. I think what we should do is let's hear the questions live here so everyone can get a sense of what's on your mind. And then we'll see, or maybe we'll spend a few more minutes talking about one or some of them. But I think it's good to get them out there.
Okay. So yeah. I wanted this platform to be really getting into the teichin of the four steps. And today, this is written before the lesson, before the talk. So
Okay.
it's my questions, 9 questions I had on the first step. Step
Okay.
one, bury your soul. So the first question, question one, practically, how does one do it? And could we do a live example right now, which we tried to do. Part A, sub questions of this. A, is it always an intentional activity? Question B, how does one really know if it passes the test? Is it just a feeling? Um, Question C, should we be testing our thoughts and feelings or just thoughts? And what's the difference between the two? Um, D, what are the common mistakes and dangers? E, how do we make sure that we're not latching onto evil? Right? An example could be, right, how can I make sure that I'm not bearing my thought in front of all being in time in order to destroy it? Or the wrong being in time, like Rebbe said, let's say someone grows up in on an island of evil where all they know is evil. So then they're bearing their soul in front of evil.
Right.
So how do we know? How do we know we're getting the right?
Hmm.
Question F, what's the relationship between tefillah and bearing one's soul? This is something, a lot of these things we touched on.
Hmm.
Number two, can Rebbe speak about his own experiences with step one, with bearing his soul in front of Hashem, and what was Rebbe's process? How does it, when Rebbe does it now versus the first time you did it, whenever that was? Question three, where did the avos go wrong and why? The avos specifically because the avos are the avos, and but really it's all of Jews until now. Where did they go wrong, and why did they go wrong? Um, then this is a sub question to that, which I don't know, but it's how did Rebbe manage to stay out of Cherem? Okay, that's a question that I have, and it's a serious question because we're delving into a lot of things, and Rebbe says has a lot of opinions in the theory that I other people can say and they get in trouble.
Okay.
And Rebbe has not yet. I'm not wishing this upon Rebbe. And
That's
I don't know
Hashem,
if
of course.
one day, I don't know if there is such a thing nowadays. Is this everyone's in Cherem,
Okay,
but
but why was not canceled?
whatever.
I think the question
Yeah.
now, modern terms, is why wasn't I canceled? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it could be that this is the first. I don't know how long. It's just maybe it's just a matter of time. I
No,
hope not too. I hope not.
no,
Whatever's
I think there's
best.
a good reason for that. Maybe
But
we'll talk about that question. Let's hear all the questions. Yeah, I think
I
I like
thought
that
so.
question.
Question four. Rebbe brings proofs, but I don't think proofs are necessary. Rebbe brings many proofs from Tanakh, from many psukim in Tanakh, in the Sefer and on the Substack. And yeah, but it's not interesting, the proofs, right? We have a conjecture. Is there anything wrong with it? Is there any problems we can find with it?
Right, you
That's
mentioned this before,
fine.
right? You mentioned this before, the same
And
question.
and I have this question. I don't know why I connected it here, but in Rebbe's theory in general, like why isn't this explicitly stated as a mitzvah? Why is it a game that Rebbe and maybe some other people before Rabbi, I have to come up like, oh, I read the whole Torah and like,
Mhm.
Yashka, I don't know. But like, this is the Yesod. Is okay, so why didn't, what's the game? What's the game? Why isn't it there? All right, why do I have,
Okay, I'm not gonna pick
do
up
we
on
have
that
the, what?
dog whistle there. Okay, yeah.
Why, in the question five,
That's a great
why,
question. One second. Let's just give me a second. I want to think about that for a moment. Okay, a very fascinating question. Yeah, go for it.
question
Next.
five, why do we seem to learn so much and model our lives after those that didn't seem to achieve Das Hashem, i.e., every Jew that lived before us, from the Avos to Moshe Rabbeinu
Including
to,
ourselves and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Rabbi
Okay.
Chiya and
And ourselves. Okay. So much, yeah. No,
okay,
I'm sort
maybe
of pushing back on
yes,
the
maybe
question.
not.
Like,
We don't learn from ourselves.
no, I know, but everyone, people have what to teach us doesn't mean they were perfect. Nobody was perfect till whatever. I don't know if anyone's ever going to
No,
be
but
perfect. At least
Das Hashem is everything. They didn't
But
have everything.
I wouldn't say they didn't have it. I don't think it's all or none thing.
They had Das Hashem.
Yeah, for sure. For
Hmm.
sure. Um,
But they achieved it in a different way, or they didn't
look,
tell us about it.
yeah, I mean, okay, it's a very interesting question. I shouldn't try to skirt it. It like it bothers me. I don't like the way it sounds, which explains why I wasn't canceled, by the way, because these kinds of questions, like I've got a lot of respect, and I don't like it just rubs me the wrong way, the question. But it's a very good question. I'd like to maybe tweak the question and when we get back to it. But let's hear the whole list. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
I didn't ask, I'm not asking these questions. Also, when I ask these questions, I'm not asking, they're not only questions, they're not necessarily questions that I have and that I don't know the merits. They're questions that come up, right? And
Sure.
it's just a
Yeah.
simple question to come up. I mean, Rabbi's saying a theory. This is everything. This
Right.
is step one, two, three, and four for everything.
Right.
Okay. And they, all the other people didn't do it. I mean,
Right. No,
question
no.
that the generation of Geula is bound to ask anyways. Like,
Correct. Of course. Right. Exactly.
whatever the
So,
generation of Geula
or
is,
any chiddush, any
ask.
important chiddush in Torah, so we'll have that question. Um, um, like
Well,
could have asked the best, like, what happened till now? So we'll develop some theory about why this had to come now, whatever. We'll figure it out. But no, I
ask the
mean,
best
say
why
why
this
Hasidus didn't come now. I don't know.
didn't come until
There's
now.
always
Yeah,
chidushim. There's
no,
always
that's a
chidushim.
great parallel. I would, if I was Rebbe, I'd probably steal his answer and tweak
What's
it.
his answer?
I don't know what his answer is, but I would probably steal it and tweak it. But I assume it
But I
came
just
up.
said, that's what I said. I said he come up with some theory about why it had to have developed now. Now is the time for it, and so on and so forth. And I don't mean that in a cynical way. It sounds cynical, but I didn't mean it cynically. No, the reason why I was pushing back on the question was to say they
Okay, but
didn't have
Rebbe has
Da'as
to do
Hashem.
that. I mean, but no,
Sure.
Rebbe's right. But Rebbe, okay, so Rebbe has to come up with that theory of why now and
Yes.
everything.
Although I could push back and say if the content is good, the content is good. I don't have to answer every question about the theory, about the history of the theory. If it's a good theory, and then I could leave that work to the
Yes,
philosophers of
yes, no.
history.
The reason why I ask it is because Das Hashem is Das. It's awareness. It's knowledge. It's enlightenment.
Hmm.
And I would just say that if why like okay, if you're going to be learning from people without, it's different than saying, oh, there's other things to learn. It's like, but why would you learn from people that didn't have this
Right. Okay.
enlightenment,
Fine.
this didn't
Right.
have Das Hashem? What they didn't, what they knew was incomplete and was
Right.
faulty. It was wrong.
Right. So that's why I'm pushing back. That's
Basic
why I didn't like.
purity.
Right. That's what bothered me because I wouldn't say it was faulty and I wouldn't say they categorically didn't have Das Hashem, even if this particular path wasn't the method that if this method was hidden, was lost for a while.
Hold
Okay.
on. Can I read a tweet?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I'm
I'm
gonna
about to
read a
get in
tweet if
I'm
that's
about
okay.
to get in trouble. Okay, let's hear. What did I say?
Let me find it.
You could
The
remind me.
tweet
Maybe I'll remember what it is if you tell me what it's about.
here. You think you have power, you don't. You can build,
Mhm.
lead, destroy, seduce, but if you don't know the name, you are blind forest, nothing more. You move, but you don't know where. You act, but you don't know why. You live, but you're already dead. Power without Das Hashem is impotent, stressed in noise. You shake the earth, but not the heavens. You conquer men, but not meaning. You win, but without reason. I don't envy you. I don't envy you. I mock you. You don't know it's real. I do. And quotes from Shneur Burton to all Jews that came before him.
No, I wasn't talking to Jews.
Rahman al-Litzlan.
I was
Rahman al-Litzlan.
talking to the not to the
That was
haters.
my clincher. But the aside is I mean the aside is someone would ask this question.
So let me
Um,
state this very clearly. Although we can sometimes make statements that are very stark and black and white, things are never as black and white. Okay. Uh, when I write in that statement, you don't know, I do. There's no, I don't know fully. Whoever's reading that and whoever I'm directing that to probably knows a little bit. Doesn't
Wait,
not.
I want to take. Can I qualify? I'm sorry because I did throw a bomb. Rebbe was writing that out of to express a certain type of a certain emotion
Right,
about like it was just a poetry. It was like it
right,
was poetry. It's not a site.
right,
But my question generally is that this is generally sort of Das Hashem is Das Hashem is knowledge.
right.
Without Das Hashem is lacking knowledge.
Right, right. And by
How
the
could
way,
Rebbe?
it wasn't just it was a big aside, and I think it's very important once we're talking about it. I think it's good I to mention it. I'm trying to advocate for a certain pride. Is like Ian Hanavi says, the only thing to be proud of. And I think this is partially why we're facing so much anti-Semitism is because we don't have Jewish pride. And the reason why we don't have Jewish pride is because really we deep down we know the only thing we should be proud of is Da'as Hashem. And until we work that out, we're not going to be proud. But if we understand Da'as Hashem, we're going to be very proud and we're not going to take anyone seriously who doesn't have Da'as Hashem. That's when we're really going to be back.
Wait, why does Rebbe think Zionism though has the pride that the
Why do I
has
think what?
Zionism does have they succeeded at the pride.
I don't know about succeeded. They somewhat. I mean, they did something. There's still a big element of feeling that we're supposed to justify ourselves to others, and I think that's rooted in Jewish in Gullus. I mean,
There's a chalik of religious Zionism that does very much feel very proud.
yes, true, true.
Um,
Okay, I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure. Maybe either I guess I would have to say they have Das Hashem or that they're in a either they
well,
actually have Das
it
Hashem.
could be
Maybe they
they
do.
do. I mean,
Yeah, it
keeping the
could be they do.
Torah and being in the government of
Yeah,
the Torah
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
Eretz
No, it could be
Yisrael
that.
can is a good
Yeah, for sure. It could be it's the part of Das Hashem, especially given the point I was making before that it's not an all or nothing proposition. And we might, for these purposes of these kinds of statements, we might say it very starkly. But if someone's living in Eretz Yisrael and Isaac in Binyan of Eretz Yisrael, Al Piyat Torah, he for sure has a lot of Das Hashem, and he has what to be proud of.
But I guess what I want to do is kind of define the gray area. Like where do we take the statements before as like what's the difference? Meaning why is someone that didn't have Das Hashem, what can I take from them? And if I don't take everything from them, why not? And if I do take everything from them, why them and not someone else if they both didn't have Das Hashem?
So
Right?
a lot to unpack there, which also has to do with the
Yeah.
question of Torah, because see, if Torah is in the service of Das Hashem, and someone could explain the Torah to me, even if he doesn't have the full Das Hashem, he might still explain aspects of Torah that are necessary for Das Hashem. Okay, you could have specialists. There's a lot of different things to talk about, but so the question is an interesting question.
I think the
Well,
Torah is
but
yeah. I was thinking along the lines that the answer is the Torah.
yeah, the Torah is a very important document which we need, and we're not, and we need a Rabbeim who worked on it and have what to teach us about it. Um, the point I was pushing back on was this idea that like they didn't have it. I wouldn't say that because what does Das Hashem mean? We already established that Hashem is not something we could define. It's something that we're oriented towards, and Das means a mindset. And we already just explored a little bit how subtle that could be and how a person could try his best and do the same practice, but still not have the mindset. And you also mentioned before there could be people that can maybe naturally jump to step 2 or 3, and that could happen, without them going through this process. So I'm just saying that this is the process designed to bring individuals to it. But to say that, like, people who didn't know this or weren't thinking about this didn't have it, categorically, I would never say such a thing. I think that Tzaddikim had it, the Chacham had it. This is the design, maybe there's a
Some of
different
them
design.
had it.
Some
Some
of
of
them
them.
had it, and maybe there's a different design.
And
Is that
I
the whole
always think
question?
of this. I always think of this thought is that we came out through a long gullus. Like I think at least I'm on the other side of a long journey. Through many dangerous parts of Eastern Europe and many dangerous time periods. And you know, we had to be carried out of there. We had to survive. And the way that we're standing now, the way that we're standing now physically as Jews with our hashkafas is from our Messiah. I mean, it's how Rebbe was opened up to Torah, how I was opened up to Yiddishkeit and everything. I mean, it's necessary. Without
Exactly.
that's how I'm here.
That's right. That's right. It's necessary. It's
Yeah,
part of the process. It's part of the process, and we're not looking for perfection, you know?
we are. Yeah.
I mean, we're looking for it, but right. Sorry. We're looking for it, but we're not insisting on it in everything that we're that is influencing us. We can learn from things that are not perfect.
Okay. Now to the easy questions. Number six. Which secular people does Rebbe think achieved Da'as Hashem? And question seven.
Despite not doing this practice, hello, you realize that.
What?
Despite the fact that they also didn't.
I think maybe they. I
Okay, but I'm
think they
saying,
did it by. I think they did do it by this process.
but not quite so formulaically. I probably.
Well, not formulaically, I think that's why I want to know who does Rebbe think Das
All
Hashem.
right,
I
it's an
mean,
interesting question. Okay, no, I was just trying to bring out that
one
certainly.
person that I know Rebbe would say does have it, or the first secular person I think is, in my mind, the person that has bared his thoughts across the most out of any other person that I know. So it'd be like
There you go.
that.
Fair, fair. But my point was that therefore tzaddikim could have it as well. Like I think this is an interesting. I think what's important about the practice, the four steps, is that it gives us a way to publish it and teach people about it. But I think that people can get to it in their own ways. Whether it's secular people, I agree, certainly certain secular people, or obviously
Different ways, Rebbe's saying.
yeah, could be.
So why do I need Rebbe's way? You don't, just this is
Maybe you
my way.
don't. Maybe you
Really,
don't. I think it's an excellent way. I think it's like we've discussed some of the values of doing the of having a very a formula. Look, that's part. I guess part of the criticism would be like, is there another way? Is this the best way for the masses? These are interesting questions. You raise this point that like, is it a good theory? Forget about the that this is the way of the Nevi'im. It doesn't have to be. Could there be a different way? These are great questions. We didn't really get to those. I don't know the
um,
answer. Those are like really big questions. Like, is this the whole?
oh,
Does it have to be the way?
we
What?
can it said these are questions, they aren't question and answers. These are starts of discussions,
Right.
right? We will
For
find
sure.
the answers there.
For sure. So let's hear
There's
the rest of your questions. I want to get the whole list. Just
three
just just
left.
to hear them, and then we'll figure out what we're going to focus on.
Three left is seven is once the theory is stated, and we spoke about this before, but once the theory is stated, maybe even before the theory is stated, what's the role of the Torah and the mitzvos? There's the four steps, neither of them is learn Torah and do mitzvos.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's all you need in life. So,
Mhm.
um, and what Rebbe said before, Rebbe did say like, okay, now doing the Torah and the mitzvahs with Das Hashem in mind and tying it together. Okay, very nice. But like, I don't know, the Rambam says that when a person eats and sleeps and is with his wife, he should also be thinking of how is this connected to Das Hashem. So what do I need the Torah and the mitzvahs for? I'll just be
Mhm.
human, like
Mhm.
Adam. I don't know,
Mhm.
like Adam Kodem Achid. No. Okay, eight. In order to bear one's thoughts in front of everything, doesn't one need to delve into certain topics that we find dangerous and even prohibited? So this we didn't discuss so much, but part of bearing one's soul is not in front of everything is to not be scared. I mean, we all have thoughts that are cringeworthy. Das Hashem doesn't have room for cringing thoughts. You don't cringe at your thoughts in Das Hashem. You cringe, but then you take it. You say, why did I cringe? You embrace every thought. You don't shut any thoughts out. That's like number one. Rule number one of everything is not blocking. I don't know if you can, right? We're trying to grab everything, but before that is don't block. So don't block. And if an inappropriate thought, by inappropriate I mean like a bad ideology or a sad and dangerous part, and so you should
So what's
need
the
it.
question? So you take the
Everything
bad
else.
ideology and you test it by doing this. What's the problem? What are you asking?
If I'm unsure, if I know about a certain ideology that's really tempting to me and really
Hmm.
like it really
Oh,
grabs
so you
me.
think
There's
could you
something
subject it to
there.
the
I know
test?
there's something there. I don't know. It's in the back of my head, but like
Hmm.
this kind of this theory,
So
this
you're
other
saying,
theory.
could I take that ideology and subject it to this test? Maybe it's going to pass this test, and maybe it's going to become more attractive to me. Or should I block certain things? Or should I
Yes,
certain things?
that's one side of it. The flip side of it is that when we throw our thoughts in front of the test, it pass the test of humanity, we have to be thinking about everything, good and bad. We're testing it against the bad too,
So we have
including
to let our
all
minds
space
go
and
to
all
the bad.
time
So you're saying we
is
let our minds go to the evil within humanity or within the world.
well, you'd be yeah, you'd even the failed evil, right? Even the failed evil,
Hmm.
like the Nazi, like the Third Reich. I want to test it against the Third Reich, even if I understand that the Third Reich lost and that they're a disgrace and fine. But like, I'd test it in front of the Third Reich. But like, no, I'm not scared to go there. Or I'm testing it in front of socialism and
I see.
Marxism. I'm not scared to go there. I'm embracing thinking about it to test it.
But could you explain to me what you mean by testing it against socialism? In other words, socialism is an ideology. I'm talking, how do you take an idea and put it out into socialism? What do you mean by that?
So this is the question. I mean, this is how Da'as Hashem is bearing your thoughts in front of everything.
Hmm.
What would everything? So you're going through world history, let's say, and through history, but it's not just all history, it's all ideas too.
No, how do you bear an idea in front of an idea? That's what I'm asking you. In other words, I want you to take the idea and put it into Cuba. I don't want you to take the idea and put it into socialism. I want the idea. If it's an idea you could put into Cuba and into North Korea, then keep the idea. It doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't mean you have to.
How do I bear an idea in front of an idea?
Yeah. What does that mean? Take your
How does,
idea. You have an idea. I should do
what
chesed.
can I bear? What can I bear an idea in front of?
Oh, in front of an object. So let's say you have an idea. I should be kind. Should everyone in North Korea be kind? Yes. Good. So be kind. You don't have to. You don't have to think about uh the dictatorship or communist or whatever North Korea is. That's not important. You just have to think about the material conditions of North Korea. Would you insert this there?
This this is very interesting because I had an understanding of bearing one thoughts before Hashem, Ani Hashem. Hashem is comprised of everything that ever was and ever will be, every person, thing, concept, and idea throughout of space and time.
I
So
understand,
I'm
but
bearing my thoughts in front of everything.
what does that
And
mean? What does that mean? I understand. What does it mean then to bear your thoughts in front of an idea? What does that mean? I don't know what that looks like. You're raising an interesting point. You think that's part of
no,
reality. Fine.
I'll explain, and but I'll say it because I don't want to sound like I'm when I do test my thoughts in front of ideas that I'm measuring up their ideas versus ideas and I'm pulling out a paper and don't. I mean,
Right.
it's a feeling. It's which is
Right.
back to one of the earlier questions, but like it's just a feeling, right? At least until now,
Mm.
unless we change our mind. But how would I do that? I would say that how does this thought, test up against all of the ideas? Kilu, like um Christianity,
So what?
Islam,
So how does it measure against them?
Hasidism or
How
whatever,
does it measure
Western
against them?
movement. Like, how does this measure against that? Meaning, like, I guess in a simple way, does this fall in line with the good ones, and is this beat out the bad ones? Does this undermine the bad ones? Um,
Right, but I think you're making it complicated. To me, it sounds like you're making it needlessly complicated because ultimately, why don't you just say, what should do I want this idea to fill the world? Ultimately, that's sufficient.
that is the ultimate question. Do I want this idea to fill the world?
Like you
But
don't
how
have
is
to
that
consider the other
how
ideology.
is that bearing how is that bearing your soul in front of Hashem? You're saying like when he says, "Oh, understanding that Hashem is reads my thoughts and checks my thoughts."
Right,
Right? So I want to like it's not easy to explain how, but like I want to show that thought to everything.
right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain how I can show that thought to another person. I mean, how can I show that thought to Rebbe when I'm in my bedroom? I don't know. Like, how
So
can I
you're
show
saying
that
that you have to think
person
about the other
I
ideologies.
think I use my imagination to as if I'm showing my thought to all of the people and all the ideologies, and
Mhm.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, let's leave that. I want to finish the questions up and then wrap it up. That's very interesting. I have to
But on
go.
the other side, the Rebbe thought as well. I mean, part of Das Hashem is not being as scared, right? And kind of like I don't know. Okay, we'll leave that question. We'll go to the last one. Um, Question 9. What are the actions that should come out of achieving Das Hashem?
Mm.
Well, this is not so much a question on step one on bearing one soul is something else that we were discussing, but the sub question of this is, can the actions that come from Da'as Hashem potentially have more of an impact in spreading Da'as Hashem than the actual discussion of the theory? Um, how do we prove
Yeah,
that the theory is correct? We can
right,
prove with in the room of ideas, but I don't know.
right.
I don't like that. I know Rabbi likes that because I don't
No.
think that the best theory always wins those conversations amongst the people listening. Sometimes people listening walk out and say that the guy that lost really won. Um,
I see.
and
So you think we need practice, right? This gets back to our first conversation where I was saying like we need to look for the results of Das Hashem. We need to figure out how they're gonna how the results will happen and make sure people notice those.
yeah, I think it's just memela that this podcast, our proof is that this podcast will be the number one podcast in the world. And if it's not, our theory is second to the number one podcast in the
Well, it
world.
could be they may have something to do with us not having the best tech or something. There could be other reasons for that.
Well, it'll
Okay,
come.
but Das Hashem
Right?
should get the
It'll
best tech.
come. If we
I
were the
guess
best, if we had the best ideology and the best way
right,
to live, and
right,
we were pushing this podcast, we would
right.
have the
Correct.
unlimited Zoom option
Totally agree with you.
by next session.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. And by the way, it has to do with tefillah also because this is why tefillah is so important. Because if we would have tefillah with Das Hashem, and we would daven and know when we're davening that like what we should do is teach this, then we would put ourselves into this like in a way that makes it that much more successful. So like getting into that state of davening when you're davening of like here's what should happen in the future makes you commit to doing that in a way that you wouldn't have committed to otherwise.
Manifesting.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyways, okay, these are wonderful questions. Let's wrap it up here. These are great questions. I'm glad we have at least put a list of them. We'll figure out what's next to talk about. Um, let's leave it at that for now. So what did we do today? We covered a lot of good stuff. We covered a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
mainly focused on step one and
Step one.
some of the broader.
Yeah, the ramifications of that. And I have to think about the ideology question that was interesting about, and also there was another thing that I think was very interesting, which was oh right, about everyone doing the same thing. That was something I want to think about more. Okay, Zev, thank you so much. And
Thank you, Ruby.
maybe Mashiach will come before Tisha B'Av and we'll read Yirmiyah. We'll read the pasuk in a happy tune.
Yeah.
Haskell Yadai Icy.
Yeah, what does Rabbi recommend for Avodas Tisha B'Av?
Um, allowing yourself to really understand what's lacking and how different things could be. That's it. That's it. Really, what sort of very much. That's what I said brought up before. It's like very much related to what we're trying to do here. It's like trying to remind ourselves that things could be a lot more interesting. And like, yeah, things are wonderful. It's great. We do mitzvahs, do Torah, and we should. But like, we're very far from unlocking the blessing of the Torah, the essence of the Torah,
Can
and
I
just
ask
you know,
can I ask a question?
yeah, sure.
I was reading just flipping through some of Eicha today, and when you're reading about some of the tragedies, it seems like we're so far. It's almost a joke. We're so far from some of the tragedies, it almost seems like a joke. And of course, there's a lot to go, but it seems like it's way sillier. Like we're way farther. It's way harder to connect to understand the tragedies that were than, of mothers eating their children and stuff, things like along those lines. It's almost harder to imagine that state of Chorban than it is to imagine the state of Geula. And does that makes it a little
Why?
different?
We've had some sufferings recently. What does that mean? Why are you saying that?
What are the sufferings we've had?
October
I
7th was not so long ago. What do you
I don't want to minimize them, but
October 7th was not so long ago, and the war since then. I don't know.
I'm not minimizing the sufferings that we've had. I'm just putting them into perspective to humanity. If you put it into perspective of all of humanity of all time, you'd come out that saying that any other generation went through the year that we went through as a nation, and they'd be dancing in the streets and singing. The amount of casualties, Rahman
Yeah, I
al-Assad,
know.
that we've had, but they would. If you
Right.
Das Hashem would say that we should be singing and dancing in the streets right now.
I think
So
I agree with you.
how does that make it?
I think I agree with you about that. Okay, Zeb.
What?
Yeah, I agree with you in principle about that. I don't have a good answer to the question, and I don't think I'm capable of giving a good answer now. So let's leave it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.